I got declared emergency. My pilot's unconscious. I need help up here.
Hello everyone and welcome to FS MaNiA. One of the questions I seem to get on a regular basis is what kind of view system do I use for FS MaNiA videos? From time to time I get requests to share my camera setup files for a particular aircraft. And you know the old saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man a fish, and feed him for a lifetime. With that in mind, I decided to do sort of an overview of the camera management software I use and how I set it up. EZdok for Microsoft Flight Simulator 10 FSX is a camera manager that enhances view control. I use EZdok for probably 80 to 90% of the views you see in an FS MaNiA video. The other 10 to 20% of the views are simply the FSX built-in views, such as this one, which is just the outside spot view being tracked around the aircraft by moving my mouse while holding down the scroll wheel. This video is not intended to be a complete A to Z, everything you ever wanted to know about EZdok but were afraid to ask type tutorial. I'm going to show you how I set up EZdok cameras when I add a new aircraft to my hangar. To that end, we have Coronado's version of the Beech King Air B200 sitting on the ramp here at Southwest Florida International Airport in Fort Myers. I recently purchased this Coronado version of the King Air and the Fort Myers scenery for a very special video feature I am going to include with the Flight 1 King Air series I'm currently working on. Be sure to stay tuned for what should prove to be a very intriguing flight in this airplane coming soon. So, let's walk through the process of setting up the cameras. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is run the EZdok config tool. And you need to do this every time you add a new aircraft to your fleet. So we're just going to do that right now. It's real simple. Just double click it. We just say configure FSX, and it's that quick. It's been done and everything passed. Please restart FSX. That's all there is to that. One other thing that I would do is, this is my Fsx config file. And if you go under and look in the, I believe it's the main, is it the main? Yep, under the main section here, hide info text. I keep mine on 1, which means yes, and because I don't like to see all of the red text on my screen when I'm making videos, but in order to set up your cameras, you're going to want to see that, so I'm going to change that to 0, and then I'm going to save it, and that should help me to set the cameras up, and I'll show you how in just a second here. So let's move this. Okay, so I've loaded up our aircraft, the Coronado King Air B200, and basically we're loaded up in the virtual cockpit mode, and I'm just using my mouse to look around just like I always would. I take the scroll wheel, press it down, and just move the mouse. I can look right, left, up, down. But I don't have any views set up yet, so that's the first thing we want to do. There's a truck over there. I hope he doesn't get too loud. And so what we're going to do is come up here to the add-on menu and bring up the EZdok and show up and click on Show Studio. So I actually have set up one camera already. It was the one that basically we're already sitting here, and I just named it Pilot Eye. Normally this just comes up blank. These are some I have set up for somewhere else, so we're just going to focus on the virtual cockpit cameras right now. And so before I make any other cameras, I do want to check to be sure that this camera has all the settings that I want, because I'm then just going to copy them, and then we're going to rename them and reset them. So basically what I'm looking for is, if I press the number 2, you can see that you can hear, I hope you can hear that, there's a little dinging, and I can edit the camera by moving my mouse around. And if you look up here, you can see it says 0.6, and that's why I wanted to be able to see the text. The 0.6 zoom is what I've set. We can change that by using the scroll wheel, but I have found 0.6 works pretty well. So you want to keep all your cockpit cameras set the same, so 0.6 is a good place to start. So we'll use that, and then basically just make sure we're happy with where we're setting. I can use my arrow keys now to move forward or backwards, right or left, and I try to get my my main pilot view set up where I'm setting pretty much centered up in the seat and fairly close to the panel, and that I can, and also that I can see over the glare shield. So this looks like a pretty good view. When I'm happy with it, just hit the 2 key again, and that stops. Then I want to check these settings right here. Well, inside, I don't use this one right here. That's a resonance setting, but the random and the dynamic head movement, I keep those clicked. So I can right click that, and it brings up this dialog box. I can click edit, and on the ground, this is too much shake for me, so I like to bring it down to around 1, somewhere around in 1. Is about where I like it, and if you can look to see what it'll look like in the air, you'll get a little bit of movement there. You don't get too much. It's not so much you can't flip switches and so forth. So somewhere along in there is good. So when you get that set where you want it, you can close that. You can also open up the dynamic head movement box just by right clicking it, and you can change the main level on it too. So if it's too much, you can bring it down a little bit so that you don't get exaggerated head movement. So usually this is just stuff you can play with. You don't need to worry about all this. Just the main level is all you really care about. And over on the random head movement, just the global gain. Forget all this other stuff, just the global gain. That's all you really need to worry about in terms of editing. So once you get those where you want them, now we can copy this camera, and we're going to do that. So we're going to clone the camera with the effects, and it'll make another copy of it right there. And let's do one more, clone with effects. So now we have 3 copies. I actually end up using 6. Normally on the interior at least 6, but we're just going to set these 3 up for right now. So we'll rename this one, and just by double clicking on it, I can come in and we'll just call this one Instruments. And let's name the next one, we'll call it, let's say Overhead. So, and you can set these, name them whatever you want. You can call it Pilot 1, Pilot 2, it doesn't matter. But just normally I keep mine in the same order so I can remember them from plane to plane, and I'm not always hunting around looking for which switch is which. So if we go back to Pilot Eye, you can see I set up a button on my joystick. I've got 6 buttons on my Cytec X55 Rhino, and you can use keys on your keyboard, but for my interior views I use the buttons on the throttle. And so I've already assigned button 6 to that one. For the instruments, I'll assign the next button, which is 7, and for the overhead I'll assign the next button, which is 8. So just by clicking in there and then flipping the switch, it automatically maps the buttons to it. So you can see I've got 6, 7, and 8. Now I want to modify this view right here, so I'm going to hit the 2 key again, and basically, and I'm not going to scroll, I'm not going to use my scroll wheel to zoom in. I'm going to use my arrow key, zoom in, and then I'm going to page down, and I'm going to get myself in here where I can see these instruments, and maybe I want to see the GPS too. So I'm going to just change my view slightly like that. I get where I like it, I'll say OK, I click the 2 key again or press it, and then there it's is the view. Now I can adjust that anytime I want to. If I need to adjust a little bit, hit the 2 key again, just move the mouse around or use the arrow keys, and I can adjust it. But let's say I like that, and that's good. Then let's go back to the Pilot Eye view just by clicking on it, and now I want an overhead view. Well, right now it's still the same as the pilot view, but let's click the press the 2 key, and let's look up, and let's say, well, I really want to get a little bit more to the right, so I'm just use the right arrow key, and let's say I want to be a little bit closer to it so I can read it, so I'll page up a little bit and maybe page forward a little bit, so just to zoom in. But you notice that I'm not changing the zoom, I'm still 0.6 zoom, keep all those the same, and now I've got, let's say, a good close-up view of that, and let's say that's what I want, so we'll stop that. Alright, now I've done everything pretty much inside I need to do. I've got all of my keys are mapped to my joystick, You can again use your keyboard if you want to. I use my keyboard, my number keys for my exterior views, which we're going to set up next. But just to see what that looks like now, we can easily go from this view to this view to this view up here, and then I can add more views. So let's just add one more. Let's clone with effects, and let's come down here and let's do one that's called switches. So let's bring that in. I'll change the name to switches, and let's assign it to the next key on the next button on the joystick, which is 9. And then let's go in and let's come down. Let's say I want to look at these switches over here, so I'm going to go forward and now down and get up close, and let's say that's what I want to see. That's good. Now we have switches. So now we can go from whichever one we want to. Now I'm going to close this box, and I'm going to use my switches on my joystick now just to look around. There's my instrument view, there's my overhead view, and there's my switch view. And once I get into each view, I can also scroll around and look around with my mouse, and I can also use my arrow keys too. And I'll show you to make sure, so I can look all over the place. I can always go back to my main pilot view, and I can always go into my radio view, always go to my overhead view, but then I can look around from each one of those views. So going back here, just show you one more thing real quick, and then we'll go outside. EZdok, let's bring the studio up. You can see that I've got point to point is highlighted. I do like 360 so I can look all the way around, and then point of view is highlighted. So I use these three. I'm not using track IR. You can use track IR with this. If you do, then you'd have that one highlighted. I use these three right here. So I really want 360 on all of them, just so I'm not limited to just 180 degrees or something. So now I can basically look all the way around. So if I'm here and I want to go back here into the cockpit, I can do that. Open those up, and I can use my arrow keys, and I can go back here, and I can set a camera up back here. So that's how you do it. That's how I do it anyway, and I typically do set some cameras up back here, and I assign them to some different keys. But you can set as many cameras as you want, and then you can just look all over the place. So yep, this is Coronado model, and it's not the next model we're going to be flying. We're going to be flying Flight 1, but at any rate, King Air. And we're going to go outside now, and I'll show you how to set up the outside views. Okay, I'm back in the pilot seat here where we started. And to go outside, one thing I'll show you, if we just were to, let's say, use the arrow keys to go out, you'll notice, the model is basically pretty weird looking. So the only thing the developer of the aircraft is going to show you when you're in the cockpit mode is the things that you could see from the window. So they don't waste all the graphics and processor to render things that we don't see. So just using my switch on my joystick to go back to the pilot view in the virtual cockpit. So what we want to do to go outside to get those views set up is come back to our add-ons. Let's bring Show Studio up, and we're going to click on one of these over here under Aircraft. So what that does is that brings us up to a view that has the exterior rendered, and that's where we want to start. Now you notice we're sitting here and we're cutting through the model at the port wing. So I had to think for a second. Port left. So this is just typically where we start. Let me get that back up. Didn't mean to close that. Show Studio. So first thing I want to do is let's set up a camera here, and I'm just going to name it, and I'll just call it Exterior 1. And these, you can't clone them the way you can over here, so you really need to set up each one differently. And in these, 360 is good. Point of view is good, but the point to point, I don't check that. Basically, you'll see the difference in the effect. You can use this one, which I believe stands for camera resonance, and so if you want to hook or attach a camera to the aircraft, that's a good one to use, and you can adjust it. This one brings back up the same dialog box, and if we go to edit it, you'll see basically on air, on ground, and I usually bring these down too. I don't like too much shake. I don't mind a little bit, but I don't want too much. So you can play around with that, but you can go ahead and set those up on whatever you like. If you're in rough weather and you want a lot of shake, then go ahead by all means. You're going to get some anyway naturally from turbulence. So somewhere in there is typically excuse me, about where I go. Okay, so we're going to close that, and we're here on this camera, and so what we're going to do is hit our 2 key again on our keyboard. Now if you notice, we're on 0.4 zoom, and that's too much. So the first thing I start doing, I've used my basically down arrow to back up from the airplane, and I use the scroll wheel on the mouse, and I like on the exterior view to use a 1.0 zoom, and that way you don't get weird wide angle looks. And you can change this up a little bit, but I really like the 1.0 for outside. If we get right up on the aircraft, and let's say, and I'm moving forward with the up arrow basically, and we get this real wide view, it distorts the image, and it doesn't look, you can see the horizontal stabilizer there is way distorted. Everything looks kind of weird, and I want it to look natural. So that's why I back up from the airplane, and at the same time I'm backing up, I use my scroll wheel on my mouse, and about a 1.0 zoom. Now you can page up if you want to page up. So just these exterior views, I like to change them up. I like to do a little this and a little that, but basically I'll start one view that'll be, let's say, somewhere over here, and when I'm happy with it, I hit the 2 key again, and it stops, and I've got that one set up. Now I set these, assign these to a keyboard, to a number. So just click over here, and this one I'll say is number 4 key. So then I'm going to go right here, and you notice it brings me back to that same spot. So I'll go ahead and just kind of double click the space here, and we'll call this one exterior 2. And you can name them front, rear, whatever, landing gear, be creative, whatever you want to use. And so while I'm in here doing this, I usually go ahead and just name them all that I'm going to use. And normally I use about 6 interior, 6 exterior, sometimes more, depends on the airplane. And nothing's set in stone on this, but this is just sort of my kind of way of doing it. So that's our first one. There's our second one. So let's edit that second one. So hit the 2 key, and first thing I'm going to do is back up and get my zoom back to the same 1.0. So I'm backing up and zooming in at the same time, and when I get that where I like it, then I'm going to change and bring myself around, and let's say I want a view of the front of the aircraft, and let's say I want it to be fairly close, so I'm using my left arrow and my up arrow at the same time, which is bringing me closer. And I can go down a little bit if I want to look up, and I'm using my mouse to change it. And let's say I'm really happy, I want to be able to see the gear come up and down, and that's the view I want to use. So I'm happy with that. I stop right there. Then I go to the next one. Oh, before I do, let's give it a key. That one would be number 5. Then let's go 3, and we start that process all over again. So I'm backing up and zooming in, and there's 1.0 right in there. And let's say this one we're going to go from behind, and let's say also up high. So I'm using both keys at the same time. I'm going around and up, and let's say I go right there, and I like that view, so I stop it, and let's call that one number 6. And then finally we do another one here, and so 2 key, and this time I'm going to go this way, and I'm zooming in, get back to that 1.0 zoom, and let's come on around. Let's just come over to this side so we can see this side of the aircraft. Okay, so let's say we got this view right here, and we're happy with it. Okay, so hit the 2 key, and finally let's give that one the next key, so that one's 7. So I use 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then if I want to add more, I can use some letters. Now that we have those, we can go from one view to the other, to the other, to the other. And let me close the box, and I'll just use the keyboard to do that. So there's the 6 key, there's the 5 key, there's the 4 key, and there's the 7 key. So basically it doesn't, it just jumps from one to the other. So that's the outside, and once you're in a view, you can use your mouse to look around. You can also use your arrow keys to change. So let's say if I was setting up a camera shot and I wanted to zoom into the aircraft, I might start from back here, and then basically I can use my forward arrow and page down and come down like it was a crane shot sort of, and then I might get down to a certain point and then start moving off to the left and use my mouse to kind of keep the camera centered up on the aircraft. So I do a lot of these when I'm talking about the aircraft in the beginning. And most of the shots I use en route, though, a lot of them that I use are actually just some of the ones that are built into FSX. And that would be, let's get back over here, that would be, I go to the cockpit, to the outside, and the spot view. And I use a lot of the spot views. I can use my mouse and I can move around. I can zoom in with the plus key or zoom out with the minus key. So sometimes I'll get in nice and tight. I've got so right now views set up, this one, this one, this one, and this, and that one right there. Now a couple other settings I will mention. Let's go back and bring up the studio again. We've got these set up, and again, you can set as many as you want. You can change the order. There are ways to scroll through them. I just use my number key and my joystick switches to move around. And there is over here under options, under general settings, there are some other settings here that you can use. And so, for example, right now we're outside, and the one that I typically use outside is the default is cinema, and but when I'm doing doing videos, I like to slow the camera up and not move as fast. So you can change the speed. This is the keyboard and this is the mouse, and you can change the smoothness of it. And I do that a lot of times to make it a whole lot smoother, and just so the camera's not herky-jerky all over the place. Same thing for the virtual cockpit. In fact, we're going to jump back in there. Let's get this back up. So if I'm outside and all I want to go inside, all I got to do is hit the switch on my keyboard, and I'm right back in inside. So let's say this is just a little bit too herky-jerky for me, and I wanted to change that. I just go up here to add-ons and show the studio, and come under options, general settings, and under virtual cockpit, then I would change everything to cinema. So that adjusts all those switches. And then let's say I wanted it to be a little bit slower and smoother. So I can bring these settings down just a little bit, and actually I want to raise the smooth up just a little bit. And now when I move around, it's not quite as jerky. I can still move fast enough, move my head fast enough, but it's a little bit slower. So just a little easier on the viewer, I think, on the videos. So a lot of the settings I use are more, just to try to get a decent video sometimes. So you can play around with it. It's really easy. If you can fly something as complex as, say, a King Air, then you can normally figure out what you need to know on these. There's good documentation, and I will, in the comment section or in the show notes below, I'll put some links in there. This is available from Flight 1. EZdok is available from Flight 1. I'm not sure how much it costs. I'm using version right now 1.15.1. I think there is a version now 1.16. So there's a newer version, but I'm pretty happy with this one. So I don't know that I'll upgrade until later. I mean, this one's working well for me, so I probably won't change it. But they do have a newer version that's out, and what else? I think I've covered pretty much everything that I can think of just off the top of my head. Just a real fast, quick tutorial. I personally, for me, EZdok, I like it. It's a really, really good camera system, good way to get around, move around the cockpit, and look into things that I want to look into pretty effortlessly. And I don't want to have to worry about moving around in the cockpit. I want to worry about flying the airplane. So it works well, and I recommend it. And I don't get anything. I'm not getting kickback from EZdok. They don't even know who I am. So, it's just one of those things, user preference. You may find something you like better, and if you do, hey, be sure to comment on it down in the comment section below. And if you have questions, I'm not an EZdok expert, but I'll try to help where I can. Leave those in the comment section below. And I'm looking forward to flying the Flight 1 King Air B200, and got some great things in the pipeline that will be coming up pretty soon on that. So stay tuned on that, and until then, thanks for watching, and from FS MaNiA, so long.
I need to get this thing on the ground. I'm flying the King Air.